Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. Week 2 of college football is done and in the books, as well as week 1 of the NFL. So we're going to be talking about both, as well as previewing a little bit of college football next week. We're going to start with the preview, Miami USF. Andrew, first thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an exciting game for me as a Canes fan. Just everything about this game is so much more hyped up than I thought it would be going into the preseason. Obviously, USF is now ranked after a win against UF last week, and it's just an exciting prospect for USF to be an actual good team. And I mean, there's never been a rivalry between Miami and USF, so I don't like have any animosity to them. I'm happy they're doing well. Byron Brown actually very much scares me. Like he's a great quarterback. He's one of those dual threat quarterbacks that like genuinely stays on his feet. I remember that Boise run that he had 2 weeks ago where he like maybe broke 7 tackles on his way to the end zone. That ability does scare me because I feel like Miami's biggest issue has come on defense in the last couple of years. And I don't think the biggest issue is their biggest issue has been the defense the last couple of years. And tackling specifically, I mean, the secondary was a big liability last year, but tackling was a big thing too. So having an elusive guy like that is an issue. But I think that Miami has shown they can not only play good teams, but they can play good teams well. I'm excited for the game. I think that Miami comes out on top, but I think USF definitely gives them a really good game.
Yeah, I think this will be a really good game regardless. I believe it opened at 16.5 points. I don't know if Miami is going to be able to cover that, but I still think that they'll be able to win by 10 or something like that. That's just the early prediction. But yeah, USF stock is probably about as high as it's been since either 2007 or they had a couple of good years in like the mid 2010s. That was right when UCF was getting really good. So they kind of got knocked down a little bit. But that is the kind of Bulls team that we're talking about right now. They had the 2 opening ranked wins, and everybody's buying stock in USF. They're trying to do something that hasn't been done since 1987, and that is win the first 3 games over ranked opponents. The last team to do it was Miami, 1987. So, yeah, and I would love to see a stat on how many of those teams that actually were able to do that started the season unranked in the preseason poll, because this is almost miraculous what they're doing, right? Who would have thought Boise State, Florida, and Miami if they were able to pull it off? But don't want to get too ahead of themselves with that. But like you said, Byron Brown was great. Also, this defense for USF is really talented. I mean, unbelievable game against Boise State, smothered them from start to finish. And then for Florida, they got that safety, and they were able to keep that Florida offense in check for just about the entire game and lived off of field goals, got some scores when they really needed to, and obviously they drove down to 1. So this defense is no joke. Miami's ready. I don't think they're going to be caught off guard, and this is the greatest game or sporting event on CW in its history, probably.
Yeah, no, I think 100%. I mean, since they've gotten that deal with the ACC, it's very clutch for them that they get this game specifically because it is a game between 2 highly ranked teams at this point. And I think the point that you're making about their defense being so good is a little bit scary from a Miami point of view, because you look at that DJ Lagway offense and you just think that that SEC team is going to dominate that defense. And by no means did they. It felt like it was a struggle every single time that they got the ball, even on their scoring drive. So I'm interested to see how Miami comes this game. And I also think that this was like definitely the best possible thing that they beat like UF last week. If they would have made it a close game and lost, I think that it's still like a wake-up call, but not as big of a wake-up call as them completely knocking off UF. I think that Miami comes prepared into this game, and they're not looking at USF as just another game on the schedule. Like even like last year, it just felt like checking off another box. We beat them in Tampa and it didn't really feel like anything. But this year you go into this game and it's not just another game. It's a ranked opponent, and it's honestly an opportunity for Miami to team to build their resume, because the ACC isn't going to have that many ranked teams this year, and getting 2 possibly what's USF ranked like 15, 16, 2 top 20 wins within the first 3 weeks of your season is huge for the Miami Hurricanes, and could really bolster their resume towards the end of the season when you're looking at playoff rankings and how you're going to seed teams.
Yeah, USF sitting at 18. Clemson just had that awful game against Troy, still pulled it out. But this could be one of the top teams that Miami plays in all of the regular season. Obviously, they still have Florida and a couple of really good teams on their schedule for the rest of the way, Florida State as well. And right, I believe, right? I'm not making that up. Yeah, so they got a lot of really good talented teams still left on the schedule, but USF could end up being, the second or third best team in the regular season. on Miami's schedule. So they definitely want to show up and not take this team lightly. I think maybe that would have been that could have been a scenario if they hadn't won against Florida last week and pulled it out late at the end. Maybe this could have been a sort of a trap game. USF tries to bounce back. They've got a lot of confidence. They didn't win in that sense, and they take on Miami, who's maybe looking ahead. That's definitely not the case. This could have been, I brought it up to you before. Obviously, game day is going to Georgia, Tennessee. This could have been a viable option. We talked a little bit about game day potentially not wanting to go to the Miami campus. But this is the second best game on the slate, I think, if my memory serves me correct, of the entire weekend. That's really good. I don't think Miami's taking it lightly at all. I think a couple areas that Miami could potentially take advantage of, USF, it's really just Byron Brown. He is obviously the quarterback, but he leads the team in rushing, and the next best rusher's got like 88 yards the first couple of games. It's him on the ground as well. They're going to try to smother him. I think if they can do anything defensively, and that defensive line for Miami is ferocious. If they can keep him in check, they got a pretty good shot, especially at handling this offense. And then just as long as they don't stumble a little bit on offense themselves, I think they should be good. I'm also seeing an 18.5-point spread on ESPN Bet. That scares me a little bit. I don't know if this is like a 20-point game for Miami. I got too much respect for this USF team. What they've shown us through the first 2 weeks, they're a good football team. Like, Miami has the guys, right? They should have the guys on the offensive and defensive lines. We saw it against Notre Dame, right? But like, these guys played in high school. A lot of in-state guys. I mean, in-state rivalries, that's a real thing. I don't think it's a 20-point game. Miami matches up well, but I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, and I think that, like you're saying, like because of the fact that these are some players that have played against each other, there is a little bit of a just competitive factor that you want to kind of get back at some of those guys that maybe went to Miami over you, or maybe some of these guys played in Miami and didn't even get offered by the Hurricanes. So it is kind of that, like, maybe not a revenge factor, but these guys, like, especially from the USF side, like, they are coming to play this game, and it does scare me a little bit. I think that what you're saying is pretty accurate with Byron Brown, though. Byron Brown is that offense. It runs through him. I definitely think that Miami has a lot more versatility, but even so, like, UF kind of came into the game knowing that as well, and they just completely weren't prepared for it. So I really hope that, like, just in general, like, Carson Beck goes out there and just plays the way he should be playing. And again, Miami has the guys between TJ Daniels, Malachi Toney, Josiah Schrader is maybe going to play this game. Like, from top to bottom, Miami, like, does look like the better team. Ruben Bain on defense, he's going to be one of the top picks in the NFL draft. The offensive line is pretty stacked, even against a solid Notre Dame front we saw in week 1. So I do like the overall feel of this team, but like 18.5 points scares the hell out of me, because it feels like if this game is close, like USF could have a chance to pull it out. Like, I really hope that it's either a Miami blowout, because like a Miami blowout or nothing, because it does feel like if USF is playing a really good brand of football right now, and if they're keeping it close in the fourth quarter, I'm scared as a Miami fan.
I mean, I think Miami has the guys, especially in the trenches, and I feel like not enough people do talk about that Florida in-state factor. Those guys coming from high school to college. So we'll have to wait and see. I think we're both picking Miami still this week, but don't like that the spread is that much. I think USF can use a little bit of bulletin board material. People are still counting them out. They're going to be a really good team, but
Yeah, I love to be wrong about this as a Miami fan, but I see that as a betting guy, and think USF plus 18.5 is definitely a good spread. I'd hammer that, to be honest.
All right, let's move into a little bit of a week 2 recap. You brought this up to me, and I completely agreed. The week 2 has kind of turned into a bit of a FCS tune-up week for a lot of different programs who play a really competitive game in week 1. We'll get that tune-up in week 2 if they, didn't get it in week 1. So this is something that I hate about college football, and I kind of wanted to propose it to you about, like, how much you also don't think that this is really good for the sport. I mean, we're seeing a lot of different teams play these programs, pay them a lot of money just to put up 70, and it's just not good for the sport.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. Just the concept of the fact that, like, you're allowed to play at, like, a lower division of football and pay the money to come to your home stadium and just absolutely get destroyed. I have a good friend that is a reporter for UCF and covers the UCF team very closely. And UCF currently this week went against North Carolina A&T, which is an FCS school. And their head coach openly admitted, he said that it wasn't worth the travel or the attention that an FBS school brings, and like just the glamour of playing an FBS game, because first of all, it's not glamorous for an FCS school. They're losing by 70 points, and it's not really bringing any attention to the school. And second of all, in that game, they lost their top 3 quarterbacks. Like, now for the rest of the season, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not like tuning into every NCAA football game, but like, they're screwed. Like, they lost their best 3 quarterbacks in that football game, and then they went away to go play a game where they were always going to lose by a ton of points. And then like, again, injuries are a factor, and just so much goes into it that it doesn't really make any sense for the FCS schools, besides the fact that they get money, and that's genuinely the only reason they play these games. But I just want to list off like a few scores that happened this weekend. Florida State over East Texas A&M 77-3. You have Bama over I actually have the Ohio State game pulled up here, but Ohio State 70-0, Miami 45-3. Like, everybody does these games, and even to a lesser extent, like Oregon versus Oklahoma State, that's not an FCS game, but I think that it's just funny to mention 69-3. But there's a lot of schools that use week 2 as like a tune-up game, and I think it's a little bit unfair to these FCS schools that are being played. Like, it's unfortunate that they do have to play these games for essentially the money, but like, it just is unfair, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense, because like 72-17 at Tennessee over East Tennessee State, there's just so many examples of it just being like a terrible week of football too, obviously, to watch. Like, it's just like, you don't really have to turn on college football in week 2, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to realize that with how it just got out of hand this week. The Alabama score that I was looking for was against UL Monroe. They won 73-0.
USF Florida and Michigan Oklahoma, and probably maybe a couple other games, right? Like, probably that just, I don't have off the top of my head, probably saved the weekend. But yeah, like, we're like, me and you are not making this argument to say like we do. I don't like it. I do think that a lot of teams should stop. I don't like them playing FCS teams. I think at the very least, you can pay some of the teams in the group of 5 to go play them, or to have them come in and you play them. Like, that might seem like a better option. And I understand taking the risk of playing like a North Dakota State, a South Dakota State, some of the great teams in FCS is like kind of a lose-lose situation, right? Oh, you didn't blow them out, then you immediately get punished for it. But it actually turns out that they're some of the best. They're better than some of the teams that are in the group of 5. Like, I get the lose-lose scenario, and the fact that some of these teams in the FCS definitely need the money to be able to survive. Even when you get a situation like North Carolina A&T, where it just feels like it's not worth it, it's still just a factor of the sport. But like, this is preseason football, right? If you have a week 2 game that's a tune-up like this, I almost want to say it shouldn't even count for the record. But it's like, where do you pick and choose, right? With South Dakota State, North Dakota, like, how can you end up making that differential piece of evidence? But like, these are just, how do these count the same amount as beating, if you're LSU and you beat Clemson week 1, or Miami beating Notre Dame? Like, it doesn't seem like it fits. And I will say, I do actually like, if you are a team like Notre Dame and you don't play in that conference championship game under any circumstances, no matter how good you are, I do think it is at least something that you don't play an FCS team.
Yeah, I will give Notre Dame a lot of credit for that, because they don't play FCS teams, and I think that's very respectable on their part. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. It is unfortunate that it all goes down as 1-0 on your record. Obviously, they're looked at as completely different games, but like, it is like, when you go down a list of like a schedule, right, and you're trying to determine like schedule rankings, or like how you're going to determine those last couple playoff spots, right? This week doesn't even count. Like, this, nobody will ever factor in a 73-0 Alabama over UL Monroe like win. And that's kind of the point that we're trying to make, right? Like, the fact that if you're looking at this as a whole, this won't even like relatively count as like a check mark or anything on your resume. Like, it just doesn't really make any sense to be playing these games. And it is unfortunate for the losing side a lot of the times, because I feel like it's more common than not that like they'll probably sustain an injury because of the fact that they're playing 2 different brands of football. Genuinely, like the way that the guys are hitting at the FBS level, especially at the top level, is completely different than what they're used to.
And yeah, and I didn't want to bring it up too much, and I know we're going to move on to some of the like other stuff that happened last week, but maybe North Carolina A&T, and I don't think that this is some sort of like hot take, but maybe if they do actually just simply play another HBCU or they play a team in the FCS, they don't lose all three quarterbacks, because the difference in the line play is also the big part. Skill guys come from every school, but you don't have a ton of offensive linemen or defensive linemen coming from the FCS level, or at least you don't have as many by like, and it's like a major wide margin when you compare them to some of the really top or upper echelon teams in college football, P4 programs. Like, it's just not even close. That's where the brand of football really comes in. I don't know how those injuries happened specifically. I don't know if it was just like, they rushed 4 and they got to the QB just way too many times. But like, that is a big point that I don't want to ever sound like, just being a wuss out here, but like, it is a slightly a player safety concern, they got to call up the dogs at a certain point, right? Like, I mean, it is a little bit much.
Yeah, and then the disparity of those offensive and defensive lines makes for those injuries, right? Like the fact that it's like an FCS offensive line going against a Power 5 defensive line means that like the running back or quarterback has a very much higher percentage chance of getting injured. And it is just unfortunate, but I understand where the benefit is for both teams. And it does unfortunately sound like we're like kind of like reading it a little bit too much into it, but it just is unfortunate, and it makes weeks like this one just essentially unwatchable. Like, even if you are a fan of those teams, like, I'm not turning on Miami Bethune-Cookman for like the whole game. I watched the majority of the game, but it's just like, you're never going to lose that game, and also it's just like not that enjoyable to watch, because by the third quarter you're sending in all your third and fourth string players.
Yeah, and for a sport that I think is almost at like a semi-professional level, it does feel like a little bit unprofessional or inappropriate to have those type of games. And yeah, maybe we're reading too much into it. Like, these schools get money. It is what it is. And you have the chance, like an amazing upset that will live on forever, like App State over Michigan when App State was back in the FCS level and they were one of the better teams at FCS. Like you have the chance for that. You have the chance for a Cinderella story. It is week to week. They put on the cleats just like you do, right? Like, that's probably what they're saying in the locker room. They put on the jersey just the same way, bro. So that is what it is. And another point before we get out, like, there were so many crazy performances that happened too that people don't really notice because they don't really pay too much attention to these games. As you mentioned, sometimes teams don't or like fans of teams don't really all tune in all the time. You might tune in just for fun to see them blow out some random team. But like, there were some running back performances this week that were mind boggling, literally Madden and NCAA football type of stats, like 5 rushes for 140 yards. The UCF, one of their guys had 250 all purpose yards, like on like a handful of touches. And they weren't the only ones. Like, there were multiple performances from running backs and then obviously from receivers. And they call up the dogs eventually, but these are guys who, if they rushed the ball 15 times, would have had 300 yards. And that's unbelievable. That's not football.
And then you just look at like stuff on social media, like, or just in general, like the Grambling State or head coach had a press conference before the game, and he was just like, "Yeah, we know what's going to happen." Like, he literally just admitted, like, he was, and they do know what's going to happen, because there's just not really a chance. Like, you're playing the number 1 team in the nation, you're Grambling State. Unfortunately, you're going to have to look ahead to next week.
I think eventually these games are they're going to be gone eventually.
Hopefully.
I don't know when, but maybe 15 years from now, there's not going to be as many teams playing it. But let's move into Billy Napier and his fate at the University of Florida. It's looking bad right now after this recent loss to USF, and they've got a gauntlet the rest of the way. We just talked about Kalen DeBoer. What is it looking like for the rest of the season for the Gators? He's got the hottest seat in all of college football.
Yeah, I think easily at this point. I mean, I know Kalen DeBoer is like definitely up there, but this loss just puts it into perspective so much more, because they not only drop out of the rankings, but they play 3 of the top 7 teams in the nation, and one that was literally the number 1 team in the nation going into week 1, which is now 7, Texas. But they play at LSU next week. They play at Miami the week after that, and then they play at Texas the week they have a bye week in between, but still, or they play home against Texas, but that's probably not a winnable game either. Obviously, they have DJ Lagway, they have great recruiting classes, but at some point, Billy Napier, it's going to be about wins, and you are at University of Florida. Like, there's always going to be a tough schedule. You guys play in the SEC. there's got to be a time where you start to win these games, and it's not like he hasn't. Like, he had an 8-4 season last season, but there's just been way too many people call for his head already, and it is more than likely that they will be 1-4 after these next 3 games, and where does that put him at? Like, there will definitely be calls for his job at that point, and it's almost inevitable. Like, what game are they winning out of those 3? Like, are they going to beat LSU at LSU? Are they going to beat Miami at Miami? Are they going to win at home against Texas? Like, it's probably just not going to happen. Even if they do win one of those 3 games, like, they're still probably going to get blown out in either of the other 2. So, and then after that, it's not like it gets significantly easier. They play at Texas A&M, the 12th man in college football. They have Georgia at a neutral site 2 weeks after that. Like, that schedule is absolutely absurd, but like, Florida fans like are used to winning. Well, maybe not in recent memory. Like, I'm a little bit of a Florida hater, but it's like, they want to see winning football. They put millions of dollars into that program every single year, and there's a reason why they have a hard schedule. They want those tough games, but at what expense? And it might be at Billy Napier's expense, because I don't see him lasting beyond this year, especially if they don't. Even if they make a bowl game this year, it could be wraps for him.
If it's like a 6-7 or 7-6 type of bowl game this year, maybe there's a conversation about it, especially like how recruiting is shaping up to be. 20-20 during his tenure with Florida, 10-14 in conference. That is looking really bad. People have been pointing to this schedule for like since before last year started. Everybody was pointing that this schedule is going to look really, really bad. And it also just so happened that USF has its best team in a while. And of course you lose to them in that sort of fashion. We just, I opened this with Kalen DeBoer. I mean, shoot, would you rather play your FCS opponent in week 1 or week 2? Because now Billy Napier's getting he's getting the brunt of the media, and that Long Island dub feels like a light years ago. So
that genuinely felt like the
it's
preseason.
Essentially just flipped. Both of these teams played really tough, like all of a sudden really good Florida teams, from Florida State and USF, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, and they both played FCS tune-up. So I don't want to make too much of an overreaction, and I also don't want to say that they're completely dead and out of the water, because they did rally last year and put together a pretty good year. And the end of last year, I think a lot of people were very, very optimistic, especially with DJ Lagway potentially taking another step. Didn't really see that. I haven't really seen that just yet, but I think there's still some hope. But yeah, he's on the hottest seat possible, and I don't know if anything under 8 wins saves it here, especially because he's been now the head coach. This will be his if he makes it through the end of this year, he would have had 4 years. And I think a lot of people look at that and they say, you had a shot. Not a lot of people feel sorry for a coach who had 4 years to turn around a program. I mean, anything else, maybe lower than that, you can make an argument, especially where you take over. Like at what point? But this is looking rough. But I really don't want to count them out just yet. I know they have like the world's toughest schedule the rest of the way, but I feel like they could pick up some dubs here and there. I don't think they're going to be 2-9 going into FSU. Like I've seen a post about that. Like I think that might be a little bit too much, right? Like he could still be in trouble, and they're not 2-9.
Yeah, if they're 2-9 by FSU, I don't know that he's there.
He may have already got fired by that point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't think he's there for that FSU game if they are 2-9 at that point. But yeah, I like even if you just take a quick glance at their schedule,
it's so bad. It's so bad.
They have 8 of their next 9 games are against ranked opponents. Their worst one is the worst ranked opponent they have is Ole Miss, and they're number 17 in the nation. Like they play in the next 8 weeks. They have 8 or 9 weeks. They have 8 ranked opponents. 8 of the top 17 teams they're playing against. Like that is just genuinely so absurd. And then they come off of just playing the number 18 team in the nation. So they'll have finished with, if the season ended today, they would have finished playing 9 ranked teams out of a 12-game schedule. Like that is like an impossible task for almost anybody, but still like it is just unfortunate the situation he's coming to the season with, because he's been on the hot seat since last year. And it's just unfortunate. That job is a little bit unfortunate because like we've seen it before, like that Florida job is hard to keep because of the fact that they do play a hard schedules every single year. And it feels like from years on end now, at least for the last 2 years, we've gone into the season saying, damn, that Florida schedule is tough. And it has been.
I wanted to circle back to your point. I know a lot of different shuffling can take place in the top 25, but they might get a quick addition too to make it one extra ranked team, and that's Mississippi State. I thought you were going to mention it when you were talking about it. Obviously, they just got the big win over Arizona State. They didn't make it into the poll this past week, but they have Alcorn State this upcoming week, and then they play Florida. So they'll be 3-0 at the time of that matchup. Or no, excuse me. Wow, they play them way later. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking that
they do have.
But they got Northern Illinois. Maybe they take that. Then they have Mississippi State. Oh my God. Or I'm sorry, they have Texas A&M. Yeah. So I'm so messed up when I'm looking at the schedule. I thought they played them much earlier. Whenever I was looking at Florida's schedule, maybe you don't add them, I guess. But they could be a really competitive team. They showed a lot more when they beat Arizona State. I don't know what they're going to be by that point. Shoot, I thought they were playing them in a couple weeks. I had it all messed up on my thing. But the schedule is tough regardless. And Kentucky did not look that good last week, but still they could potentially be better, especially towards the later part of the year. They have no easy games the rest of the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like that Mississippi State game, like if we really are just going through that schedule, they have two like completely like games that they should win. So that could put them in the rankings between Alcorn State and Northern Illinois. And then if they can win one of Tennessee or Texas A&M, they probably are in the rankings by the time that Florida game comes, because it's in 4 games. Those are their 4 opponents. If they make it in, like 9 ranked opponents in a 12-game schedule is absolutely absurd. And I do feel for Billy Napier, because it's an impossible situation. Like, what are you supposed to say to your guys? Like there's no amount of coaching that you can do that'll like fix a schedule where you're playing 9 of the top 20 teams in the nation. Like it is unfortunate for him, but like it might be his time to go. And maybe he might catch some sympathy points because of the fact that the schedule is so hard. And I think that's what happened. That's not what happened last year. They had a good season last year. They won 8 games. That's the reason he's still the head coach, but it's going to be hard to get anywhere close to that this year.
Thank you for the Mississippi State schedule help. We're both right. I think they could potentially be ranked. We'll see if they win either of those games against other ranked teams before they play. I'd imagine he's still got a little bit of a script from last year, because they were in trouble last year too, and they kind of turn it around. So maybe he'll use that. But let's move into NFL Week 1 recap, winners and losers. Let's start with the winners. Andrew, who you got?
Hey, so my winners are going to be a little bit of a funny one. We're going back to back on a trade that just happened. I would like to highlight the Packers and the Cowboys as both winners this past week. Obviously, the Packers, for obvious reasons, they come off a win against the Detroit Lions, who were one of the best teams in the NFC, one of the best teams in the NFL last year. And they just look like a dominant force. I feel like people were definitely talking about the Packers coming to the season and possibly even as like Super Bowl threats, but they kind of solidified that with this week 1. And obviously the Lions have their own issues, but man, that defense with Micah Parsons looks so good. And then you look at that offense, and they look like they have some weapons on that team. Matthew Golden looked like he was decent for his first game in the NFL. Jordan Love, it looks like the guy that was supposed to replace Aaron Rodgers, and just in general, that team looks like they could be really good going into the season. So I really like I'm high on the Packers at this point, and I think that they are potentially big winners going into the rest of the season. And then the Cowboys, you look at a team that they just lost Micah Parsons. You don't know how they're going to show up in week 1. They're playing the defending Super Bowl champions, and they come out and they're giving them a game. They're scoring on every single drive for the first half. And that game was super competitive. Obviously, it turned into a little bit of a dud in the second half after the rain delay, but still, like, that was a great game. And I think the Cowboys are in a way better position than a lot of people thought they were going to be. And I could easily see them fighting for a playoff spot. So even though they lost, I think that overall they're winners. And it does pain me to say this a little bit, because I'm hoping that people stay to this point. The Packers are not, I don't like the Packers at all. I feel like the America's team thing is a little bit overhated, but I'm one of those haters. I'm not big on the Packers or the Cowboys either, but I'm going to show them a little bit of respect here. Like, I think that they had a solid week 1 performance, and Dak Prescott looks like the guy, like he looks like one of the guys, and you can see why he has a $60 million contract. Maybe not why he has a $60 million contract. That's a little bit extensive, but still you understand what I'm saying. Like I definitely think they come out of this week as potential winners.
In a competitive game like that against the defending Super Bowl champions, you could definitely see why he's getting paid. That would have been an instant classic. had it not been for the delay. And as you mentioned, it did turn into a dud. The Cowboys look really good. If they could finish that game, CeeDee Lamb obviously got a ton of blame at the very end of the game there. If they can finish that game properly, maybe the conversation is a little bit different. I mean, it's different with the media as far as the Dallas Cowboys are concerned. They looked good. I don't think it's a bad pick, even though they lost. And then, the Packers. I mean, that would have been my winner. We're going with different winners in this. The Packers are a great pick. They looked unbelievable against the Lions. They controlled that game start to finish. Good stuff on them. I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just feel like if you insert a QB that is competent and a little bit above average, this Steelers team can be above average. I think they have the ability to move beyond that 9-8 that they've been stuck at. And Aaron Rodgers threw 4 touchdowns. Awesome stuff. Had that chip on his shoulder because he's going to talk himself into whatever he needs to go out there and play football. And that looked really good. That was super promising. That I don't know if we had seen the Steelers offense play like that in a very, very long time. And I do think that it is sustainable. If Aaron Rodgers can throw like he did, at the very end of those Packers years, this Steelers team is legit. What is he? They're legit. If he hasn't done something like that since he was with the Packers.
Bro, you're like fantasizing over Aaron Rodgers over
I tell you what, man, this reminds me. I tell you what, man, it's a cats in the cradle kind of situation, bro. Yeah. This is Favre with the Vikings. I'm seeing it. I know it's not the hottest take or the most niche take. I know a lot of people are seeing it. I think it's Favre with the Vikings. I think they got this small window. I think it's working. I think they can make a run. I legitimately do. They're in a really tough division in the AFC. I liked it. I get it. It's against the Jets, but I also think the Jets look pretty good too. I think Justin Fields, I kind of felt bad for him because he was on the opposite end of the loss there, or of the game with the loss. I thought the Jets looked like a very competent team. Also, Jalen Ramsey closing the door on the Jets. That was a great end of the game. I thought it was a great game for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, I won't push back too hard. I think that the Steelers definitely showed some promise in that game, but I just have to remind myself that it is the Jets. I want to see a little bit more out of the Jets, and then I want to see how the Steelers team fares against a team that isn't the Jets. I definitely think that Aaron Rodgers having a 4-touchdown game and beating his former team and being like, I liked beating everything associated with the Jets was a nice touch. And I am not the biggest Aaron Rodgers hater, so props to him. But I'm not a full believer in them, and that's a tough division. I think they have some really tough games and some pretty tough losses coming up.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be a realist. Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, got all of his friends signed, and then ran a couple of coaches out of there. What did the Jets do to you, bro? If anything, they have more of a case on the other way around. But my other winner is the Bills. If you had checked in with me about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, maybe it would have been the Ravens. But I just think you have to give it up to a team that has such an inspiring week 1 win, even for all of the faults that happened before 4.5 minutes to go in the game. It's just actually unbelievable that they were able to pull it off. And game of the week, you texted me, you were like, I think that was the best game I've ever seen in my life. When that happened,
it was pretty close. It was up there.
It was a good take. That was such an amazing game. I think I'm jealous because I fell asleep. Yeah, but and I'll admit, but I got to give it up. They major winners start this season 1-0, and then the Ravens still don't get that edge over the Bills. They killed them in the regular season last year. Obviously, not so much in the postseason. So, Bills kind of building a little bit of momentum in that rivalry, and I think that's total positive.
Yeah, I mean, I have no pushback to that. I think that the Bills, as much as I hate to say it as a Dolphins fan, the Bills have just been so good for so many years. And it really was never the Bills that I hated that much. I genuinely do dislike the Bills as an organization, just everything about them. But I never really had a pure hatred in my heart for them because I was too busy hating the Patriots growing up. That was the team that we always circled on our calendar to get beaten by, and then hopefully maybe we went into Foxborough a couple of years in and ruined a potential playoff push or something like that. But I do want to give it up to the Bills. Josh Allen, I was texting somebody this, I forgot who at some point, but Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, even above Patrick Mahomes at this point, I like Patrick Mahomes as a player over both those two quarterbacks they just named, but those two quarterbacks look like they're playing a different level of football than anybody else. It almost feels like Patrick Mahomes 2 or 3 years ago when everything was clicking and it just felt like football was he was in a different realm than everybody else. That is the brand of football that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are playing right now, because neither of those two defenses are bad. Like both of those two defenses have really good guys on the team. Like you can go down a list of like Roquan Smith and just a bunch of Malachi Starks is now playing in that team, the safety out of Georgia. Like there's a bunch of guys on that team. It's the Ravens defense. They always have guys on the team. Bills defense is a little bit less so, but still like the way that they were able to dominate that game and like put up 40 points in week 1, the only two teams to do it, it is just very impressive. And I do really like the Bills as winner this week, and unfortunately.
All right, let's move into your losers. Who do you got?
So for the losers, I have I want to start with the 49ers, just the fact that it's hit and miss because they do have the easiest schedule by last year's like rankings going into the season. So they could still win a bunch of games, but Brock Purdy was so uninspiring this past game. He had 2 interceptions, 2 pretty bad interceptions where he just lofted it up and got like it got taken down by the other team both times. And then their injuries as well. Juwan Jennings goes down early in that game. George Kittle has a great first drive and then goes down early in that game. Christian McCaffrey comes into that game on the injury report, and everybody holds their breath. Like that team could look completely different if those players can't go for extended periods of time. George Kittle has already been ruled out for a couple weeks now. I think that the 49ers could be in trouble here. And then the second one I have, trouble is an overstatement, but the second one I have is everybody in the AFC East except for the Buffalo Bills, because the Miami Dolphins, will get to them later, but that was probably the toughest game I've ever had to watch as a Dolphins fan in my life. And I think that if Justin Fields isn't that guy, the Jets could be in a really bad spot, because I think that they're in a position where they could win just enough games to like not get a good quarterback, but like not enough wins to even be competitive in a really competitive AFC. And then you have the Patriots. They like Drake May just had a rough day at the office, and I don't think that Raiders team is very good either. And that could be like one of the few games you circle in as maybe a win. They were controlling that game at one point and still managed a way to lose it. So everybody except the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East looks like a loser after week 1.
So I'll start with the 49ers, and I'll make both of these quick before I get to my losers. They didn't really look all that great, and the Seahawks were in position to take the game, and a late fumble stopped it. So it's like a winner in week 1, but a loser overall. And then those injuries just really suck. It always feels like the injury bug just hits them, and it's not something that'll help them, especially when they definitely could fix some stuff from week 1. The AFC East, I mean, yeah, the Dolphins. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine watching that game. And that is, yeah. So we'll be cool. I'll be quick with it, but man, that feels like a QB coach swap at the end of the year. If I've ever seen one, it's on the way. We'll talk about them later. And yeah, the Pats, I think uninspiring is probably the word. A lot of teams felt uninspiring. And then I wouldn't really go too far with the Jets, but yeah, you definitely want to see it. I know a lot of Jets fans post-game just felt like, classic Jets. Felt like they had it. Felt like it was just they were playing inspiring football, and they lose it. They just don't have enough to end the game against. Obviously, it feels like you're going against an organization, one of the better run teams in NFL history, and it slips away. So definitely sucks for them. And it always feels like the AFC East, when they got a top dog, those other 3 teams just kind of fall. Then they fall hard. But my losers were the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. We'll start with the Lions. The biggest thing here is losing both coordinators is a thing, and it does hurt your team. It's about how you answer it, but that week 1 performance against the Packers, and I'm high on the Packers. I think they're going to be a very good team this year. I have them going to the Super Bowl, which sounds so ridiculous to say. I don't know. I know a lot of people disagree, but I know a lot of people disagree, but I believe it. But this Lions team losing both coordinators, they looked really bad. I do think that there's a bit of a concern with when we look back on this team a few years from now, will we say what their season was last year was the best chance that they had to make a run at the Super Bowl? I'm starting to get a little bit worried. I was worried when they lost to the Commanders, because that just feels like home field, 15-2. Oh my goodness, that was their shot. And you get bounced in the divisional. You don't get as many years as you think you do in your Super Bowl window, and sometimes it slips before you can really recognize it. It's like what's the old saying? I wish wouldn't it be nice if you knew that you were in the good old days before you left them? That's what this Lions team feels like. Oh, also saw another stat. I think it ended up getting fact checked, but without Sean McVay or Ben Johnson calling the plays, there was some people saying that Jared Goff was 0-19-1 I think I got fact checked to like 3-18 and something. They're figuring it out. But regardless, it's
Not
a
very
bad
good.
record.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hold the 0-8 record. I believe or like 0-7-1 or whatever he was with Jeff Fisher that first year with the Rams against him, because that was his rookie year. It is what it is. But something to watch. Something to watch. It might not be nothing. And then also the Texans. Would have been nice to see CJ Stroud bounce back a little bit. Would have been nice not to see him throw 0 touchdowns and a pick and not have a ton of yards in the game, and the team put up more than 9 points against the Rams team that was definitely beatable in week 1. Definitely would have been nice to see them play a little bit better, and the offense just simply wasn't there. They had a chance late, just like the Seahawks did, late fumble, and that's all she wrote. You got to get 9. You got to get more than 9 points, though. That was really unfortunate, and people are going to be knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, what's going on with CJ Stroud if this keeps up?" Going into week 3, 4, 5. So they're my losers.
Yeah, no, for either of these teams, it doesn't look particularly good. I think that the Lions are more inclined to bounce back, and the Texans, it is so unfortunate that he couldn't get the ball to his wide receivers. As a Nico Collins fantasy owner, I was suffering through that game. Felt like there were so many opportunities to get him the ball, and he just the ball was never even in his direction. And it's just, there was so much promise with CJ Stroud his first year too, that like you look at him and you think that like the sophomore slump is a thing, but you want to see so much more. And the Rams do have a good defense, and they have a lot of like lesser opponents, especially playing in the AFC South. So could they win that division? Could they still be fine? Yes. But like in a conference where the top quarterbacks are Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes, it feels like CJ Stroud's going into his first season. It felt like he could maybe make himself a part of that conversation. Right now, it feels like they're light years ahead of him. And those are at least 3 teams that are better than you in your own conference.
And it feels like he's also pretty far behind Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
And that second tier as well. Yeah.
There's a gap there now, I think, officially. But he's got plenty of opportunities. It's a long season, but this is what winners and losers are for.
It's overreacted Monday.
Yeah. Of course, that's what you got to do.
CJ Stroud sucks.
Let's go with some more overreaction talk. Bryce Young, uninspiring football. That was not what you wanted in week 1. Cause for concern.
I think it's definitely cause for concern. I think that his whole rookie season was a lot of cause for concern, and toward the better half of his sophomore season was a cause for concern. But I mean, he turned it up in the second half of the season. I'm not going to be one of those guys who has a ton of revisionist history. He did look good in the first half of the season, good enough where I staked my record on the Panthers winning that game. But man, that did not look good. It was like, if we're going to talk about, like, we've said this word a couple times now, and you said it in the open. But if we're going to say, like, you come into week 1, you think, man, like, I'm excited to watch my team play football. It's 0. The records are 0-0. Like, I just want to see something. Like, even if you lose, like, you want to, like, the Jets fans, like, they have like something to be happy about this week. Panthers fans don't have a lot of anything to be happy about. That JC Horn interception was cool, but man, like, that was some of the least inspiring football I've ever seen. And maybe it was because it was depressing because there was a rain delay, and just the whole environment of Jacksonville wasn't very pretty. But man, like, you want to see a little bit more out of Bryce Young. You think Xavier Legette just didn't pan out last year. He's never had a set amount of weapons. His O-line has been hit and miss over the last 2 years. But Tedrow McMillan was the guy in college, and he looked like one of, if not the best receivers in college football. So giving him that guy and watching him still not play an ounce of like a football that you enjoy watching in week 1 was very, very, like, it's probably upsetting if you're a Panthers fan, because like you go into the season probably like riding for your guy, fighting through so many comment sections. The 5'9" Bryce Young is going to lead us to the Super Bowl, and now it's looking really bad. And you look at that division too. That division's starting to shape up a little bit. The Bucs look good with Baker Mayfield, and the Falcons also. Let's forget about the Saints, but the Falcons, Michael Penix looks like he could be a really good quarterback for years to come. So you're looking at your quarterback now, and you want to see something out of him, and you didn't get that at all on Sunday.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the division. I'll circle back to the Bryce Young performance, but yeah, you're right. Like, the Panthers are looking like if you're in the NFC South, it feels like any given year, if you can put it together and you can get, a good record in that division, you can make the playoffs and you can get a home game. Like, if you could just put it together. And I think the Bucs are are the best team, but the Falcons and the Bucks look clearly like the two best teams in that division, just based off the way that they played. I think the way that it's shaping out, I think that they're the two best teams right now. It's week one, it is what it is. But I will say the Saints had a better game than the Panthers, and that's not even close. The Saints played the Cardinals really tough, and they had a couple chances late to get a touchdown and win that game against a good Cardinals team, in my opinion. I think the Cardinals are going to be good this year. The Panthers had a late touchdown against the Jags. That's 3-26. That game is 3-26. It's not 10-26, and that's a 16-point loss, 2-touchdown loss. Like that is really, really bad.
Genuinely, I just want to make a quick point here. Genuinely, Spencer Rattler looked better than Bryce Young, and it's not an exaggeration last week. Like, he didn't look very good either, but he made some tight window throws. He showed me more out of, especially because the expectations were a lot lower. Maybe that's why I'm saying this, but Spencer Rattler, I genuinely thought looked better than Bryce Young in week one. That's all I want to say.
Well, here's the thing too. There's also credit to the Jags, and there's a realization too that rain delay was really weird. Like you don't always see a like 2-hour weather delay in a game. They were playing in the third quarter when the 4 o'clock games rolled around, but you're just not here to make excuses for Bryce Young right now.
And even before that,
and the Jags played well off the delay too. I mean, they got some stuff going. I mean, Trevor Lawrence also wasn't good in this game either. Like he was just, it is what, you are also on the other side expecting a little bit more from Trevor Lawrence, but like,
it's also the Jags. Like this Jags team isn't significantly better than they were last year. And like Trevor Lawrence didn't have an inspiring, like a very good game either. And then also you're just looking at this team and you're just like, even before the rain delay, like it wasn't like they were slow. This wasn't like a Cowboy situation where they were slowed down by the weather or like the Cowboys Eagles game. Like they looked bad all game. Like it wasn't they got off to a hot start and they just crumpled. Like it was not good from start to finish. So it's like I understand like you just getting out of your rhythm and having to rewarm up and all that good stuff. But man, like that. It definitely is an overreaction. He could be fine, but I will rest my case on week one being like a terrible week for him, even if he does have a great rest.
Oh yeah. Like, hey, case closed. We know what we saw in week one. Sometimes it doesn't like lead into the rest of the year. I will say this though about week one overreactions. I get it. Sometimes it doesn't bleed into the rest of the season, but that is why this hurts so much because you have so much time to prepare for this week one matchup. You feel like Dave Canales is the coach or is the quarterback whisperer. He's the coach, the future coach of the Panthers for years to come. And you come out like that. Also, Ted McMillan, like 5 receptions, 68 yards, like he had a good debut. I know it's just stat watching, but like I felt like he didn't play all that bad. Like you're giving him that weapon, and Xavier Legette, I don't know what he's going to be at this point now too. But like you're thinking that some of these receivers are going to help him out, and it's just not there. It's just not there. And maybe the Jags are much improved. It's a make or break year for them as well. And yeah, this is really bad. If the Dolphins didn't have the game they had against the Colts, the Panthers would have been. Yeah, I know. I keep bringing up the Dolphins. The Panthers potentially would have been the team that everybody felt like their stock dropped the most. But hey, it started out poor last year too. So hopefully they can turn it around a little bit quicker than they did. All right, Let's move into the game of the century. Bills Ravens Sunday Night Football. Bills major comeback with about 4.5 minutes left in the game. Both teams over 40 points. Andrew, first thoughts?
Genuinely the best game that I've ever watched. And I'm only 20 years old, and I missed the Rams Chiefs game that was just like everybody crowned as the greatest game of all time. And I genuinely enjoyed the Bills Chiefs game where it was just back and forth. Patrick Mahomes, like 15 seconds on the clock, he's the GOAT, whatever. But that was genuinely like a lot of fun to watch. And man, I hate like giving the Bills as much credit as I am because it doesn't feel right as a Dolphins fan, but like that was like genuinely like some of the best football I've ever watched in my life. And like we alluded to before, like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are just playing different brands of football. Like it feels like if they need to make a play at any point in the game, they can, and they're going to do it. Like Josh Allen can make it happen with his. We know this, but Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson can both get it done with their legs and their arm, and they're just. I don't even really have words for it. Like that fourth quarter was genuinely like genuinely some of the most fun football I've ever watched in my life. And it didn't matter that it was the Bills. It just felt so cool. I don't know, dude. Like that D-Hop catch, the Derrick Henry runs. And this isn't like dude. If I get any hate from Dolphins fans, I'd be so upset because of the fact that it is like it was hard to not just like enjoy that game. I was playing James Cook and Derrick Henry in fantasy, so both running backs had a great game, and still I didn't even care, dude. Like I was just enjoying that game so much, and I probably repeated a lot of the same thing, but those are my first thoughts, and I feel like it is like enough to like make your mind to scramble like that, because how do you quantify that? Like some of the catches that were happening, that deflection for Keon Coleman in the end zone, the deflected catch that he had, like so them failing on the 2-point conversions, them getting them back, them coming down, they hadn't done something like that since like the 1960s. Like you can go, but that's what I had.
Well, the greatest game ever talk or greatest regular season game ever talk, I think is a really, really fun thing to do, because I did watch the Rams Chiefs game that occurred. And I think what made that game so special was just how many defensive touchdowns and defensive scores and turnovers were also paired with the dominant offense. Like that's why that game was also so special. But this has to be up there too. And just the actual ability of the Bills to be able to make this comeback, I think, is a really good psychological edge over this Ravens team. I don't want to speak too much in like some media generalities and say that like the Bills truly have one up on the Ravens, especially because the Ravens put it on the Bills last year in the regular season pretty bad. But that is one win that I feel like is just such a really good team, or a really good win for a specific team, especially when you feel like they're going to meet in the playoffs. It's awesome stuff. Keon Coleman looked really good. Derrick Henry is going to be doing this for the foreseeable future.
He's 70. It's actually absurd.
Derrick Henry's easily going to make the Hall of Fame. I think we're going to potentially have to start talking about first ballot. Is Adrian Peterson first ballot? When is he up? But like, I feel like those are the two guys that we're going to see first ballot running backs, and I think I'm ready for it. I don't know what his all-time stats are looking like for his career, but at this point, 169 rushing yards, 18 carries, 2 touchdowns, and then of course he's got 3 or 4 runs where he stiff arms a guy straight into the ground, and it's got that highlight factor. He's the best running back, I think. Just I don't really want to put his peak like above Saquon Barkley's peak, because he had like one of the best running back seasons I've seen, but he's right up there. He's right along with the greats, I think, at this point.
I think, in my opinion, you put it up there. You put it above Saquon season, just because the Saquon, it feels like that was an individual season. And I understand that he's carrying that into this season as well. But like, Derrick Henry's been doing this for years on end now. Like it genuinely, I can't remember the last time he had a bad season. And I've mentioned this 1,000 times at this point, but I'm a Dolphins fan, and I watched Ryan Tannehill go to the Titans, and I understand he played well. Derrick Henry got them to the AFC Championship game and gave them a fighter's chance against the Kansas City Chiefs in their prime. So I've never been like super high on Derrick Henry, but I can appreciate the greatness, and he is genuinely one of the greatest running backs I've ever seen. Obviously, like I want to, like, just off of nostalgia, I put Adrian Peterson, like his prime years, as like some of the best running backs that like stuff, but like, from what I can actually process, Derrick Henry is year in and year out a 1,500 plus yard rusher. He just physically dominates other NFL players, other guys that are 6'2", 225 pounds, huge, like, as well. He just will stuff them into the ground. It's genuinely a little bit absurd, and that like contribute to this game. There's just so many factors now when you talk about Bills Ravens. You have James Cook, obviously gets a good deal. He is part of the Bills offense, and just it really is just Josh Allen. Like, you can I genuinely think you can surround him with like a bunch of like mediocre receivers, and he'll still be good. Kind of like that Patrick Mahomes factor. And then you look at the Ravens side; they have a great defense. They have Lamar Jackson. They have Derrick Henry. Rashad Bateman's in that picture. Obviously, Zay Flowers is the wide receiver 1 on that team. It is so much fun to watch, and you just expect a good game at this point, and there hasn't been anything short of it. Like, the last couple Bills Ravens games have been some of the most fun games you've ever watched in your life, and I think this one is right up there, if not the best one, because that comeback, like, and you can kind of feel it brewing a little bit too. Like, when that Keon Coleman touchdown happens, you're like, it could be the Bills here, and it was the Bills.
I will say, if I don't know what the Chiefs are going to look like at the end of this season. I have them picked as my team to go back to the Super Bowl, but I will say if they don't, it's got to be Bills or Ravens. I don't know if there is truly another one of those AFC teams that can really give them a run for their money. I think there's a couple good teams, but I just feel like they might be, after what I saw on Sunday night, a step under it. And I think that's honestly great. I think both these teams, I really want to see them get a shot in the Super Bowl. I don't know how many NFC teams can really hang with the Bills or the Ravens. I want to say the Eagles, but I think it ends there. I really do think it ends there. Like the Bills and the Ravens, I think, are the top two teams in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I just want to look at it like from this game perspective, like holistically. Like the Ravens' first couple possessions went field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, and then their first punt was with 7 minutes to go, or less than 6 minutes, or 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. Like that was their first punt of the game with 6:25 left in the third quarter. Like they just put like the it's just so nice to watch the brand of football they play, and it makes so much sense why they have these primetime games, because you can't get enough of it. Like even if you aren't like a fan of these particular three teams, you could genuinely dislike these teams and admit that it's some of the best football you'll ever watch.
Let's move into the Dolphins being potentially the worst team in the NFL. They had the worst week one out of any of the teams in the NFL, and this feels like they're already looking towards next season. Now, is that actually the case, or is this a case of week one overreactions? What do you say?
Okay, going into
Go,
this
go.
going into the season, right? Didn't have the highest of hopes for the Dolphins, right? Thought they were going to win more than their projected total 7.5 games, but there's reasonable cause for you to think otherwise, and I completely understood that. There was a lot of talking heads saying that this team could be really bad, and I kind of just brushed it to the side. That week one performance genuinely like had me close to shedding a tear. Like that was some of the worst football I've ever, like we just transitioned from one of the greatest games I've ever watched. Like as somebody who enjoys Dolphins football, as somebody who roots for this team, who grew up 3 minutes away from the stadium, who's rooted for this team since I knew what football was, like I don't think I've watched a worse game than that. And I remember that week one loss where we lost 50 something to like 8 against the Ravens. That game, there were so low expectations. It was a tank for 2 a year. I don't really care about that game. Like everyone knew the Dolphins were going to be bad. Like there were at least some expectations coming into the season. It was so hard to watch, genuinely. That offensive line, like we lost Ron Armstead in the offseason. It you could see it. Tua had no time in the pocket, and I understand he's a quick release guy. Like he can maybe get out at some of those. Like it was so bad. His QBR ended up being 2.7. His quarterback rating ended up being 51.7. Dude, he was 14 for 23, and that doesn't even like sum up the whole of it. Like those 14, a lot of those completions were either checkdowns or just like plays made by the receiver. And he also had double the amount of interceptions to touchdowns. It was 2-1, so that's a little bit of an overstatement. But still, like the interceptions didn't look good. He looked like Tua turned the ball over. He also had a fumble in this game, and it's the Colts. Like I host a show with a Colts fan who sits directly to my right, and I have to hear him rant about the Colts. Dude, the Colts are not supposed to be good this season at all. Like that, he genuinely had the lowest expectations of going into the season for the Colts, and rightfully so. They have Daniel Jones, their starting quarterback, and Anthony Richardson, who knows what Anthony Richardson is at this point as their starting quarterback. Like that team is not supposed to be good. The Miami Dolphins should have come into this game and genuinely had like some sort of passion to win. And it felt like the offseason. It felt like what we were getting when Mike McDaniels came up to the podium, and he was just like all sullen and like talking about Tyreek Hill. Like it was just the worst thing ever. 2 drives into the game, Tyreek Hill's already throwing a fit. It was genuinely so hard to watch. And I'm hoping that this team could be good, but if they don't show me anything by week 3, it's gonna be tank for Arch time, because I don't know where you go from here. Tua and Mike McDaniels genuinely could get the boo after this season, and it's so sad because like this offense is 2 years removed from being the best in the NFL. When Tua had led the NFL in passing yards, when Tyreek Hill almost hit 2,000 yards receiving, like this team isn't that far removed from that. This team is 2 years removed from putting 70 points up against the Broncos. So the fall from grace for the Dolphins is so unfortunate, and being a Dolphins fan is just so depressing.
I think you covered everything for the Dolphins. I'll add one thing to it. I think that the post-game sound from this game was really unfortunate. A lot of different Colts DBs talking about, they were able just to see where Tua was going, and it was just not a good look. I just felt like the Colts had a good grasp. I mean, obviously, right, on the Dolphins offense, and that was worst case scenario for them. But I'll go give the Colts a little bit of credit here. I know not a lot of people are picking them to be very good this year, but since they signed Daniel Jones in the offseason, the one thing that the front office has said or did say was that it was going to be a quarterback battle. And I think a lot of people looked at it as an indictment on Anthony Richardson, and I'm not here to sell you stock on Daniel Jones, but I definitely think there's something to it that they knew or they had a feeling that he was going to be their starter or that it was going to be a very competitive quarterback battle so early. And they really showed out. They took advantage of all of the turnovers. They were able to put points on the board. And I believe there was a point that they hadn't done something since Peyton Manning, right? Where they were able to score on all 4 of their possessions in the opening half. And they took advantage and they really put it on the Dolphins. Now, looking ahead, I think there's a couple things here with the Dolphins. I do think that this, if it at all stays at around where it is, this is a coach and QB swap. If I've ever seen one, I said it earlier and you just said it. I think that is a moment where we see Mike McDaniel get the boot and it's done as far as the Tua era here for the Dolphins. If this keeps it up, and we might see it midseason at a certain point, right? If it's this bad. And then also, I think it's so unfortunate because you mentioned 2 years ago, this offense was so great. And I just can't help but think that when it's all said and done with Tua, no matter how this season goes, we're going to look back at those concussions and his injuries and say that that's probably why things never picked up or why these Dolphins teams never ended up being competitive late in the season. I don't want that to be too much of a cop-out because I understand Tua's had plenty of time to not have a game like this, and he was healthy last week. But I think that that's the way that I'm going to look at this, or his career, if this is really it, or if we've seen the best from them, because this really is a fall from grace. It's so unfortunate. Tyreek Hill looks so frustrated.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize this point maybe a little bit more than I did when I first made it. It was part of the rambling that I was doing. Tua's QBR was 2.7. QBR is a scale from 0 to 100. It was 2.7. I don't know that I've ever seen a obviously you look at some stat sheets and you look at QBRs and you've seen some pretty low ones. For perspective, Daniel Jones was 87.6. Daniel Jones by QBR played 43 times better than Tua Tagovailoa. That is obviously that's just an absurdity. Nobody's ever going to play 43 times better than somebody, but the fact that Daniel Jones was able to dice up this defense. Also, this defense was also just awful, but it wasn't even their fault really because the offense just kept on letting the Colts have opportunities to score, and maybe that's an overstatement too because the Colts didn't punt in the first half. They were genuinely they were able to do whatever they wanted on defense, but it was. The Dolphins defense has never been the staple of what we do. Last year they were fairly decent. It was one of the bright spots of the team. But you as an NFL fan, if your offense isn't playing well, it genuinely it makes it harder to watch the football games, right? This offense is so bad right now. Genuinely looks like they regressed from last year. And I don't even know how that's possible because it was so bad towards the end of last season. So I mean, I'm hoping that this was just a terrible week 1 and something can happen. And I'm holding out hope. I genuinely am. I am not putting it past the fact that maybe they can string some wins together here and maybe they can fight for a playoff spot. But over 7.5 wins might have been a stretch for me, and it might have been a long stretch if we look back at this towards the end of the season. And I'm just going to hope for the best because wherever this heads, just on a personal note, I don't really like any of the quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft. So where am I as a Dolphins fan? I can only hope for good things.
All right, let's move into the last couple of topics that we have for today. First one, can Travis Hunter play both ways? He had 7 snaps in the opening game against the Carolina Panthers, and he played majority offense. Is this something that's sustainable for him, or is it already looking like it might just be too much for any player?
Yeah, I mean, I came into the season with high hopes for what he could do on defense, and progressively, it just seems more and more unrealistic just because of the fact that, like, playing both sides of the ball in the NFL means it takes such a physical toll on your body. Travis Hunter was never fully healthy, even at Colorado, and that is at a completely different level of football. Obviously, the NFL and college football level are just far and away two different levels of physicality, and the guys are just so much bigger. Like, he's playing cornerback, so he's not directly involved in every hit. But if you can't stay completely healthy in college, you're definitely not going to be able to do it in the NFL. And it just seems so unrealistic that he'd be able to get through a whole NFL season playing consistently both sides of the ball. Can he play both sides of the ball? Sure. But in what capacity? Probably a very limited one, at least on defense, because I think that they've shown that they like him more on offense. He was the Jaguars' leading receiver, at least in receptions. So that was interesting, and I just can't see a world in which he doesn't get genuinely seriously injured if he consistently plays both sides of the football.
I guess the injuries were always a part of the concern. You know, this I guess wasn't really going to happen in week 1. They had said that they were bringing him along more so on one side of the football rather than the other, and it just 6 receptions, 33 yards. That's a good debut on offense, and he only had seven snaps on defense, but like I said, it's just it maybe as the season goes on, he gets a little bit more comfortable, can actually kind of adjust a little bit to the physicality of the NFL. I mean, this is in a lot of instances, if you're a rookie, this might be like the real first kind of like live serious snaps, and you got to play the whole game too. Like that's a lot to ask for a player who's playing both sides. So I think that should be recognized. And just from an athletic standpoint, I brought this up to you before we went on. If you're in a major delay like that, in a weather delay, maybe it is a little bit risky to kind of re-warm up and then go and play both sides of the ball. Now, I'm sure he was, he only had 7 snaps, so he wasn't playing much defense before that. But I feel like that's major cramp situation or risk if you come out there after a weather delay for any of the players, especially if you're playing both sides. So just from an athletic point of view, that could have been tough. I also think Travis Hunter, maybe he benefits a lot, I think, from Brian Thomas Jr. being the best receiver on that team, but he only had 1 reception for 11 yards. He did have the touchdown, but I think being that wide receiver 2, I think that takes a lot off of him. Being wide receiver 1 and cornerback 1, I think it's the closer that we get to seeing more and more of him out there on the field, it feels like it's almost impossible just for anybody. It's a lot. That's a lot of pressure. We put a lot of pressure on QB rookies. This is a lot of pressure on anybody. And I know the Jags traded up for him and then they gave a lot up, but that's a lot on a player. And especially, as I've mentioned, in week 1.
Yeah, that last point that you made about them trading up is why I think that he will start to get like increased snaps on both sides of the ball. I just don't think it's physically possible. Is the point that I was trying to make? Because I definitely think he has the ability to. He showed that like a lot of people like going into the draft, and I think a lot of like pretty reputable people thought he was a better cornerback than he was wide receiver at Colorado. And I don't think that you trade up and lose a first round pick in the future for a number 2 overall for just wide receiver Travis Hunter. So in my mind, that means that they'll play Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. I just genuinely don't think it's physically possible for Travis Hunter to hold up and play both sides of the ball. Like, sure, he has the talent to play both sides of the ball. He has a nose for the ball on defense. He's a really good cover corner, and he is an electric receiver as well. It just looks like it's such a hard task. And if he does it, props to him. Like that would be like one of the craziest like accomplishments that's ever been pulled in the history of the NFL, I think. But we'll see how it works out. But he definitely has the talent too, and I think that the Jaguars will at least attempt it in some capability, because in some capacity, because they did trade up to the 2nd overall pick. They did lose a first rounder for the future, and I don't think that they're doing that for receiver Travis Hunter. I think that they're doing that for receiver and corner Travis Hunter. So will we see it? Yes. Do I think it's sustainable? Probably not.
Let's move into the final topic that we have today, and that is, are the Lions cooked? They lost 13-27 against the Green Bay Packers and just overall looked outmanned and outmatched in that game. Is it cause for concern? They lost both of their coordinators, and they didn't look very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a little bit of a cause for concern. You look into week one, and obviously you're playing possibly a potential Super Bowl team in the Green Bay Packers. Maybe let's not get ahead of ourselves doing that, but still, like that is a hard matchup. They're going to Lambeau, and they're playing a difficult game just in general. That's a tough game for everybody, but like man. That definitely could have looked a lot better. Like you look at David Montgomery. Only like if you want to start from the top down, you look at the quarterback. And Jared Goff, I don't care what the stat line says. He went 31 for 39, 225 yards. He didn't have a very good game. Like I'm gonna stick by my guns in saying that it just didn't look very good. It didn't look as fluid as it did with Ben Johnson, and that there is going to be a regression, especially because Ben Johnson was one of, if not the best coordinators in the league last year, but they had no rushing game at all. And they were never going to because of the fact that they were trailing for essentially the entirety of this game. But David Montgomery was their leading rusher with 11 carries for 25 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs was a little bit behind him with 9 carries for 19 yards. That rushing attack had nothing this game. And then even if you look at their top targets, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, another player I had in fantasy, only had 4 catches for 45 yards. Very unfortunate game for him, and it just didn't look very good. And that defense held up better than they probably should have, to be honest, because the Packers had a lot of opportunities to score, and they're still very injured. Like that Lions team still lost a lot of people in training camp, and is still coming off a season where they were one of the most battered defenses in NFL history. So trying to return from that against a really good offense was just unfortunate in general. But you want to see more out of their offense. Their offense was electric last year, and you just didn't get that in game one.
Yeah, so I do think that this is cause for concern. I'm high on the Packers personally. Like I don't. I think I think Jordan Love is going to play well and play well in the playoffs. Like I do buy into that. I like the Micah Parsons trade for them, especially like getting that dynamic defensive player. I do think it could potentially be like a Reggie White kind of scenario. Like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the Packers, like for real, like I am. But this Detroit Lions team, we may look back and say that their best shot was 15-2 last year, and they blew it against the Commanders when Goff just did not have a good game and they fell behind and they couldn't come back. Losing both of your coordinators, first of all, keeping them last year was a big deal. And then blowing last year is even more of a big deal. This really sucked. The rushing attack just wasn't there at all. Also, Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, shoot, he led the team in receptions, but he had 10 for 31 yards. Just wasn't very productive on the day, despite actually having 19 touches, or, only like 50 yards for the game. That's not going to really cut it, especially, since most of them were catches. So this was concerning. The defense didn't really look that great either. They got to get healthy. And that's a sucky thing to say about a team in week one, but it's not over. It's not over. I don't see 15-2 this year. I know they lost in week one, but like I'm not seeing a team that feels like a real Super Bowl contender. I think they could prove me wrong. They certainly have the ability to do so, but this was probably going to happen. Losing both of those coordinators, they're very good.
And with that, with them not probably going 15-2 this season, if you look at that division was one of the hardest in the NFL last season, and it's shaping up to this Monday Night Football game. We'll see how this goes, but this is going to be one of the hardest divisions as well. So so the Lions are now at least one game back of the Packers, and they're at the best they're looking to get a tie in that division series. And if the Packers win that division, or whoever comes out of the division, Bears, Vikings, it could be any of the four. If the Lions have to go on the road, it just looks so much worse. Like, right, you'd always rather win your division and clinch a home playoff game, and it really could look like what you were saying, that you get a home playoff game and it really was your opportunity. And those Super Bowl windows can be short. Like it genuinely, like you never know what you have until you really look back in like 10 years and you're like, man, like it really would have been nice for the Lions to get one, especially because last year before the injuries happened, like they were like running away with like the media's narrative of like number one team, like best team in all of football. Like everybody was singing their praises like through like week 10 before the injury started getting really, really bad. And rightfully so. They had a really good team, but it just, this season could look really different, and we'll see how it's overreaction Monday. We'll see how this team looks. They could rattle off 10 straight here, but it wasn't a very good week one.
Yeah, I'm not completely out on them, but that week 1 was just about as bad as some of the teams that look like they're already looking to 2026. So definitely not a good sign. I think we covered everything. A lot of college football, a lot of NFL. Any last words here before we get out of here?
I mean, I am just so glad football is back. It was a great weekend. Even though it could have been better for my fantasy team, it could have been better just for my overall picks. But football is back, and it's just so much fun to watch. So much fun to just enjoy a night of football. Sit down after a long day. I'm just
Oh
saying.
yeah, no, hey, shoot, I agree. I agree with it. But thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Big Little Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That's Andrew Greig, and we'll see you guys next time.